You are listening to Trans Resistor Radio. I'm your host, Aaron Franz. My website is ageoftransitions.com. Please go to the website to subscribe to this podcast. I have an RSS feed. You can subscribe through iTunes. You can use Stitcher Radio for mobile devices. And you can actually download every single episode that I've ever done directly from ageoftransitions.com. So please go back, check the archive, look at the past episodes, and save them, listen to them whenever you want. You may find that there are a lot of episodes that interest you. I cover a wide range of topic on this show. So new listeners, please check it out. However you made it to this podcast, I'm glad that you did. I hope that you check out more. And I have done a previous interview with today's guest, who is author David McGowan. Previously, I had spoken with him about his article series on Laurel Canyon and the music scene in the 1960s and early 70s, all the military intelligence connections of the famous rock stars of that era living in Laurel Canyon. Fascinating series. It was a great interview, so go back and check that out. I'll actually be sure to post that interview in the post on Age of Transitions for this interview as well, so check the show notes on this show. I'll have that. I have links to Dave's site as well, and you're going to want to check it out because he has written a book based on that article series. It's very exciting. I know that you're going to enjoy this interview today, so thank you for listening to Trans Resistor Radio, and enjoy. Today on Trans Resistor Radio, I welcome back Dave McGowan. I'm very excited to have you here. How are you doing today, Dave?
I'm doing well. I'm doing very well, and I'm humbled and honored and thrilled and a little baffled by how well this book launch seems to be going. I'm very, very happy with how the book came out, and that it seems to be being very warmly received by readers, and just a little overwhelmed by the whole by everything that's going on right now, but doing well.
Yeah, that's great. And we were just talking before starting recording here about the release of the book, and it's wonderful to hear what a success it's already been. It's only been 10 days as of now. But of course, the book we're talking about here is Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon, Laurel Canyon, Covert Ops, and the Dark Heart of the Hippie Dream, which is a book based on your immensely popular article series about Laurel Canyon, which I had you on the show before to talk about that very subject. It's now a book. The reception's been great. What do you hope might happen as time goes on? What do you hope might happen with the book being out there? Do you have any ideas or expectations?
I've already been very pleasantly surprised by what has happened, as I was saying before we came on, the fact that after 10 days, the book has already garnered as many positive reviews on Amazon as, my previous books that have been out for like 13 or 14 years. So, and the fact that I'm getting all these interview requests and public appearance, book signing requests, and even interest from the alternative media in writing up reviews. One has already been posted. I've already gotten one just absolutely glowing. I mean, I'm almost embarrassed to read some of the stuff that people are putting on Amazon and on the Facebook page. I'm like, come on, guys, you got to tone it down just a little bit. This is gonna start going to my head here if you guys don't mellow out a little bit. And it's just been really overwhelming, the early and very enthusiastic response that I've been getting, in terms of sales and in terms of, reviews from buyers and reviews from the alternative media and, the book signing requests, which By the way, if anyone's local, we'd really look forward to meeting you all on June 22nd at Book Soup on the Sunset Strip in West Hollywood. Just a half a mile or so from the mouth of Laurel Canyon, right there where it all happened. It's I couldn't ask for a more ideal location to do the first big my first big public appearance in many years. Wow. And I'm very excited about that. And I mean, what I would really like to see happen, and I have no idea how realistic it is, but I know that the mainstream media is going to do their best to ignore this book. You know, it's not very likely that you'll be reading reviews of it in the New York Times or LA Times review of books, but my secret dream is that it'll somehow, just by word of mouth, do well enough to somehow sneak onto the bestseller list, which I've heard it's not nearly as hard to make the nonfiction bestseller list as it is to make the fiction bestseller list. I would love to see it somehow creep up into there to where the mainstream media would have to at least acknowledge it, and whether that's a realistic dream or not remains to be seen. But so far, I couldn't be happier with how sales appear to be going and with how well received the book has been.
Yeah. Well, it's well-deserved, Dave, and I'm glad to hear about the success. And I mean, just the subject matter alone is so unique. And there's so much research put into it. But I think the subject matter is what lends itself to popularity, because it's about popular music, something that people are into just by default. It's something that's easy to talk about, you know what I mean? So if you're at a party or something, this is a great sort of way to start up a conversation to get people thinking. So I mean, what do you think about that? Is about the ease of which people can talk about this subject as opposed to maybe like 9/11 or some of the other stuff you write about on your website?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's it's decidedly less controversial than some of the subjects I've tackled, though, definitely not without controversy. But it is definitely the first thing that I've ever done that has a real potential for mainstream crossover. Yeah. The buying audience right now is primarily, my hardcore fans and people that followed the series online for years, and, the conspiracy community and whatnot. But the book also, it has a much broader appeal than that, the subject matter, the Laurel Canyon scene is of considerable interest to a lot of people, and several people have already put out mainstream books on the scene. Michael Walker's Laurel Canyon, Harvey Kubernek's Canyon of Dreams, Barney Hoskins' Hotel California, and Waiting for the Sun. All of those, and numerous other books that touched upon it that didn't deal exclusively with it. And and they've all done quite well, sales wise and whatnot, and getting reviews and all that. And so there's definitely a keen interest among a sector of the mainstream that's interested in reading more about that. And one of the interesting things about this book is when you go on Amazon, in the past, if you would have looked up like Program to Kill or something, it would say, people who shop for this book also looked at, and then there's like a long list of, these crazy, bloodlines of the Illuminati and, what transformation of America, and all these really kind of out there, mind control type books. But when you look at this book, you see some of that, but you also see, like these books that I just mentioned, Michael Walker's and Hoskins and Kubernek's books. So, there's a very real potential for, people that have, followed that to, see my book and see that it's another book on the scene and some of them may be in for quite a shock if they pick up a copy, but there's a real interest in that. And and let's face it, a lot of the artists that came out of Laurel Canyon are still very much iconic figures and very much household names to this day. People like Jim Morrison and the Doors, and the Mamas and the Papas, and the Byrds and Buffalo Springfield, and David Crosby and Stephen Stills, and just on and on and on, a very long list of people that to this day, a lot of people look on as people that were hugely influential during a important part of period of their life, and these people and these songs still have great resonance with a large sector of the population. So there's definitely some crossover potential there, and also, I hate to say it, but Charles Manson. There is a certain sector of the population that has a morbid fascination with all things Manson, and you could fill up an entire section of a bookstore with all the books that have been written on Charlie Manson, but people still want more, and there's a lot of Charlie Manson in this book. So, again, you have another potentially large market, that could be interested in this book. So, it absolutely has the potential, to sort of cross over into those markets, beyond just the initial conspiracy market, which is the people that know about it now. So we'll just have to see how it plays out, but it definitely has that potential. So we shall see.
Well, as we're saying, it is incredibly appealing, no doubt, but even so, with that appeal in mind, it's still going to be a challenging book for people that are kind of coming at this, and the people who haven't read the article series, that aren't familiar with you as an author. The book's going to challenge a lot of the idealized personas of these rock and roll figures, and this is going to be a difficult thing for a lot of people to do. Rather, why do you think somebody should do that in the first place? Why should you systematically tear down the personas of these rock and roll figures?
I just thought it was time that an alternative version of the story, was told. Everything else that has been written about that scene, the books that I previously mentioned, and pretty much all of the web posts and magazine and newspaper articles and all of the research materials that I used for this paint a very, very rosy picture of this very bucolic, almost like a 60s paradise where, you had all these people sort of living communally in peace, love, and understanding, and, it was this time and place where you could just literally stroll down Laurel Canyon Boulevard and, on any given day you might find David Crosby and Eric Clapton jamming together in Mama Cass's front yard, and a couple blocks down the road there could be another group of people jamming in Frank Zappa's log cabin, and that's all very true. I mean, that was one aspect of the scene. From the outside looking in, it was this very just ideal, very idealistic, community of musicians coming together and creating all of this, fantastic music and really reshaping American youth culture, hairstyles and clothing and just attitudes in general. And I mean, it's a hugely influential scene, and and it's always been described in very, very glowing terms. And like I say, that was one side of it, but there was a very, very dark underbelly to it as well. Just a lot of violent deaths and a lot of curious military and intelligence connections and a lot of occult overtones and just a lot of hidden weirdness, that a lot of stuff that doesn't quite fit in with the whole peace, love, and understanding vibe. There were a lot of pieces of the puzzle that just don't quite seem to fit in, and it just seemed to me that after 40 plus years, that that story needed to be told as well. So.
So in this book, you get into how many of these musicians are from military intelligence families. That's their background. Now, beyond Laurel Canyon, what is your take on intergenerational military intelligence families? Are there such a thing? Is there a network of these kind of families? And if so, what might they be up to, and what would their ultimate aspirations be?
I believe that there is, yeah. I mean, I believe there's been sort of that has existed in the background for a very long time, and that we are basically being, slowly but surely, well, actually not all that slowly anymore, steered into accepting a much more authoritarian police state type of existence than what America has always supposedly stood for. And it's been a very insidious process and has definitely been accelerated to a large extent in recent years. But the ultimate goal, seems to be to convert Americans, the entire world, ultimately, into accepting and living with and even welcoming a very overt police state. And it's becoming more and more evident here, day by day. I mean, it's unbelievable. The levels of police violence that are being accepted, these days, and just, I mean, it seems like every day you can go on YouTube and watch another guy getting beaten to death while a group of cops stands around and watches, and nothing ever comes of it. I mean, they seem to have like blanket immunity these days, and they seem to know that and act accordingly. And I can only assume that that's due to the training that they're being given nowadays. And I find it very disturbing that video after video, you can watch a whole group of cops standing around while some guy's being beat to death for apparently no reason, and none of them seem to have any moral qualms with that, and invariably they will all rally around and defend and, whitewash the actions of the officers involved, the whole department. Yeah. And, and nothing ever happens. Nothing, there's never any criminal prosecutions, and when there are, they don't go anywhere, and, these officers just go on doing what they're doing, and, it's becoming more and more overt every day that, and more obvious that the police in this country basically have blanket immunity to do as they please.
Yeah.
I mean, a buddy of mine asked me like a couple weeks ago. We were talking about I don't know what, and subject came up, and he said, "What do you think about capital punishment?" We never talked about that. And my response was, "Do we even need it anymore? I don't. Why do the police can just execute you right on the street with no repercussions whatsoever? So do we even need it at this point?"
Jeez. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just getting really scary out there, and seeing, the wildly inappropriate law enforcement responses that we're seeing more and more, like in Boston, where, you know, they put half the city under martial law with shelter-in-place orders and no-knock searches and, you know, attack helicopters patrolling the skies and armored personnel carriers patrolling the streets, you know, all in pursuit of one 19-year-old kid who may or may not have been armed, you know, and we are now supposed to accept that as a normal and appropriate police response, you know, and same thing with the Christopher Dorner case here, you know, then they had like half the state on tactical alert, you know, put Big Bear Resort into and again, they were chasing one guy, you know, and they mobilized like every officer from every department and, you know, interdepartmental task force and brought in the military. I mean,
they shot up a woman in a truck that looked like his. Remember that?
Yeah, the LA Times actually published a report within the last week about the, you know, the investigation of police actions, and there was you know, it contains some mild criticism of some of the actions that the officers took, but basically, you know, and at the end of the day, praise them for a fine performance. And made no mention of the fact that two pickup trucks were, during what I was going on, it was not safe to drive through Los Angeles in a pickup truck. Because two different people, you know, two old elderly Asian ladies and some surfer kid, both almost got killed because they were driving a pickup truck on the wrong day. You know, but yet there was no criticism of that. You know, that wasn't overreaction or anything. So yeah, I mean, it's insane what we're seeing. You know, more and more. You know, it was with you know, police beatings, police shootings, and just these massive, overwhelming responses that even if we believe the official story, are just wildly out of proportion to any actual threat, you know?
Well, just quick on the Christopher Dorner thing. I read an article, I think it was in the OC Weekly, where some officer involved in the case actually made mention to a reporter somehow that they were very upset. The law enforcement was very upset because they weren't able to do what they're normally able to do, and that would be to track Dorner via his cell phone, because he didn't have a cell phone with him, because he knew, being a police officer, that they actually could and do that. That came out. That was very interesting. Yeah,
I had not heard about that. Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of weird things about the Dorner case. Yeah, I mean, the whole thing was just really bizarre. You know, but the fact that his mother was like casually eating lunch in some diner while the cabin that he was in was burning. You know, I don't know if you saw. I mean, that was just bizarre.
Yeah.
You know, you got to wonder. I mean, was any of that even real? You know, I mean, that was just so bizarre. I mean, here's her son being burned alive on live TV. And she's sitting there in a casually dining in a coffee shop while the TV's playing over her shoulder. You know, I mean, it was just
watching the death of her son.
Just beyond bizarre. You know, some aspects of that whole thing, and and like half of the LAPD was mobilized to protect other LAPD officers. You know, who supposedly were on this guy. And I'm like, wait a minute, you guys' job is to protect and serve the community, not to serve one another, you know? And literally, I mean, they had just like half the department assigned to guard like the chiefs and the assistant chiefs and the various lieutenants and whatnot. They're private residences, you know? In some cases, outside of the city limits, they were sending their officers into other jurisdictions where they didn't even belong, without even telling the neighboring departments, oh, by the way, we're sending over 20 officers to guard this house. You know, I mean, it was unbelievable what was going on during all of that, And yeah, I mean, if that's a preview of what the entire country is going to look like in 10, 20 years, that's pretty damn scary.
Yeah. And like you say, it's so bizarre. It's almost like you're watching a movie, and then you have Dorner's mother like watching it on TV as if it is a movie or something. So you get this strange blur between reality and fiction, and this is something that I love to talk about on the show. As well, I also like to cover the military's involvement in the production of Hollywood films, because it's quite well publicized that they do. The military has these entertainment liaison offices, one of which, the major one, is on Wilshire Boulevard up there in L.A., where all the branches of the military, I think it's all of them, have their office where they work directly with producers of films. They rewrite scripts and all this. I was just wondering if you were aware of those entertainment liaison offices, and if there's any connection between them and the film business as what you described with Laurel Canyon and sort of the military influence on music as well.
Well, yeah, there definitely is in Hollywood in filmmaking, and more so now than in past years. I mean, it's always been a factor, but now it's much more blatant. And from what I've heard, the Hollywood pretty much has to toe the line if they want like access. If you're going to do if you're going to do like a military movie, well, you need military equipment. You need military helicopters and military vehicles and uniforms and weaponry and all that stuff to make a realistic movie. And the military would be very happy to provide you with all that if if you present it the way they want to present it. So your hands are kind of tied to a large extent by that. And there definitely has been a serious attempt to blur the line between reality and I don't know what you want to call it. I don't know what the word for it is, but more and more, beginning with Sandy Hook and continuing through with Boston and that really bizarre incident in England, the Woolwich, whatever it was called, the incident, which was just like so beyond bizarre that I was stunned by just what was broadcast on TV over there. I'm like, how in the world is anyone believing this? Did you follow that one at all?
You're talking about Sandy Hook now?
No, the Woolwich incident, where the two guys supposedly attacked the off-duty soldier or sailor or something over in London, and according to the initial reports, beheaded the guy.
Oh my goodness!
They drug it out of his car and beheaded him or something, and then proceeded to conduct interviews with passersby while they're standing there holding the bloody knives, and bystanders are walking up to them asking them why they did it, and it was just so bizarre and so surreal. I'm watching this going, nobody would actually act. I mean, who would do that? If you're with some friends and you might armed or something, you might consider bum rushing the guys and overpower them. But otherwise, you're going to run. Nobody walks up to a guy that had just carved some dude up and is still holding the bloody knife in his hand and carries on a casual conversation with them while videotaping it. It was just so bizarre. And then, Christopher Dorner, just the last year or so, these things have just gotten so bizarre that you really don't know if you're watching, reality or some kind of a bizarre Hollywood production,
Yeah.
There's been such a blending of the line, between what's real and what's not, that, it's gotten really weird. I mean, it's getting progressively weirder, day by day.
It's almost, these events are kind of changing expectations in the public mind too, so much that we're bombarded with this, even if it's on TV. I mean, we see so much of it that, again, we become desensitized to it, and we become confused too. I mean, it's hard to even begin discussing the psychological effects of this. But I mean, I feel like it's the same thing going on with Laurel Canyon here, where so much of the creation of those rock icons was to they were put out there for the public actually to, in one sense, emulate the rockers and kind of take on their lifestyle, and thereby degenerating society socially and making society more malleable and open to control by an authoritarian regime. I mean, is that what was going on, and is it going on today to an even greater extent? I mean, is this one big project, or what is this?
Yeah, I believe so. You know, I mean, I believe these are processes that have been at work in American society and in all of Western society for a very long time. And, you know, what we're seeing now is the fruits of all of those, you know, decades of work to get us to this point, to, you know, to where we're literally on the verge of, you know, seeing a major transformation of American society. I mean, we already have, you know, the world has changed so much since 9/11, you know, I mean, it's, the world we live in now is all but unrecognizable from what it was on September 10th, 2001, you know, and, but it really seems like we're barreling headlong into even more significant changes, and yeah, I think these are processes that have been in the works for a long time, and yeah, we're getting to a very dangerous point, you know, I think, and so yeah, you know, I don't know.
well, on the proactive side here, Dave, what do you think? What sort of things can the average person do in the face of all this? I mean, it's one thing to understand it, but what sort of, are there any kind of steps we can do, or any sort of dynamic actions we can take to sort of change things for the better here?
Oh God, I wish I had a, you know, I wish I had a hard and fast answer for that. You know, I mean, I'm just trying to do what I can to raise awareness and wake more people up, you know, and you know, I wish I knew of other things that I could do, you know, but
sure.
Yeah, you know, they got a big head start on us, you know.
Yeah.
These are not stupid people. These are very bright people who have, you know, studied these things and, you know, ways to influence and shape society for many, many decades. And, you know, we got a lot of catching up to do to figure out how to reverse it. Yeah, I really wish I had an answer for that. But
well, you're right in that knowledge is empowering, and knowledge of what's going on is certainly empowering. And you know, getting a different take on what was going on in Laurel Canyon, I think, is very useful. I know it's very useful to even, you know, hold your heroes up to account and question them and kind of reevaluate things and go like, now wait a minute, is this person really what I thought they were? And if not, then what effect has that had on me, and how could I maybe change myself for the better now that I have this new information? So, I mean, there's no doubt about it that knowledge is empowering. I mean, wouldn't you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, it seems like they're kind of trying to stack the deck against us more and more. You know, the last two, you know, kind of big, real high-profile, multi-victim, you know, events, so to speak, Sandy Hook in Boston, they become increasingly hard to criticize, you know, because in Sandy Hook, you're dealing with kids, you know, I mean, little 3, 4, 5-year-old kids were the victims, you know, and any criticism of the official story comes off as a lack of sympathy for these alleged kids who may or may not have ever even existed, you know. And in Boston, there was so much emphasis on these survivors, you know, way more so than we've ever seen before. I mean, I don't remember any one of these incidents where there was so much focus on these survivors and how badly injured they were, and this parade of amputees that we've seen now for an entire year, you know, popping up at major sporting events and various things, you know, and they just keep sticking them in our face, you know, and we're supposed to feel all this deep sympathy for
the victims, and that makes it much harder to to critique the official story of what really happened, because you come off as this completely unsympathetic cretin, who has no sympathy for these people who have lost body parts, supposedly, So they really seem to be kind of turning up the pressure, to a certain extent, against us as critics and as people who are trying to raise awareness. They seem to be trying to make that increasingly difficult to do.
Yeah. Well, one major aspect of warfare is psychological warfare. Some military people have actually said that that's the most important thing, actually. And so, that's what I see this as. It's they know how to pull at the heartstrings, so they can go about either amplifying sympathy in the public, or coming up with stories that they make up to one extent or another, just so that they can play that sympathy card, so that you're emotionally involved and that you can't critically analyze what actually might have happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Psychological warfare is absolutely paramount nowadays, or mind war, as it's sometimes called. And that's something they've been working on for a very long time. All the way back to in Vietnam days, they were talking about winning the hearts and minds of the Vietnamese people. Didn't work out too well. So for at least 50 years now, that has been a primary focus of the military and intelligence community, is waging the psychological war. Yeah. And they've made very large advances. All that research wasn't done for nothing, and all these years of experience and testing and trial and error. They're very good at it now. It's become a real art form, and a very refined science at this point, and they know exactly what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And we have to defend against that the best we can, and we have to learn to modify our techniques as necessary to counter, their various new tactics that they will continue to trot out. So, it's a daunting task, but we've got to do it, or the alternative is not acceptable. For those of us who have kids, especially, doing nothing and turning a blind eye is not acceptable.
Yeah.
From my point of view, anyway,
Yeah, no.
Burying your head in the sand is not the answer. Mm-hmm. It may seem like the easiest thing to do, but it's going
to be the hardest.
Definitely not.
It's going to bring about the hardest reality in the end, is what it does. Yeah.
Yeah.
You live in Los Angeles, so you're in the heart of what's going on here, or you're in the heart of things of Laurel Canyon, this whole story. It's close geographically to you. I was just wondering, when you drive around town, or you're maybe exploring Laurel Canyon for whatever reason, do you ever get any sort of creepy vibes, or do you have any interesting stories of stuff that might have happened that just kind of do you ever get the creeps going anywhere about town, or do you ever see any interesting things that relate to your Laurel Canyon book here?
I definitely get a different vibe driving through there, but I think that's just more just increased awareness. I've lived in the San Fernando Valley for the last, probably 20 years, and for a lot of years I worked a lot on the west side. I'm a contractor. That's my alter ego, my other persona, mild-mannered contractor. Yeah. So I get around, LA a lot, and I used to do a lot of work on the west side, and I would routinely drive through Coldwater or Laurel Canyons as the easiest access route. And, for years I did that and never gave it, it was just another thoroughfare to get through the city. Never gave it another thought. And, but, now that I've done all the research and stuff, it takes on a much different significance. And now I, drive through there and look around and I'm tempted to stop and check out different stuff. And, so So yeah, it has a much different resonance for me now than it ever did before, and I'll actually be driving through there to get from my house to Book Soup. So it's gonna be like I will have just freshly arrived at the bookstore from Laurel Canyon when I appear there next month. So that's gonna be kind of weird. So yeah, it definitely has a much much different vibe to it than it ever did before. Whether that's a characteristic of Laurel Canyon itself. Some people have suggested that there's some kind of a energy vortex there, or some. I don't really deal with all that kind of stuff too much. It doesn't really interest me. So all I can say is that for me personally, it definitely has a much different vibe now than it did for the first 40-some years of my life.
Yeah. Well, L.A. is famous for hosting all kinds of cults. They've come and gone throughout the years here. And I also wondered about Murphy Ranch. Have you been out there lately? And I wonder if do you make mention of Murphy Ranch in the book at all? Because I remember it was in the original article series.
I don't know. I'm not 100% sure. Virtually everything that was in the original web series is in the book. Nothing was really taken out. There was a lot of cleanup work was done, and but as far as the content, it's all pretty much there. Plus a whole lot of new material. So if it was there before, it's probably still there. Oh, one thing this is on New Year's Eve, this past New Year's Eve, just 5 months ago, a buddy and I were going to go down to Hollywood for the night and just kind of bop around and see what was going on down there. And at the last minute, my buddy got a call from a friend of his who had been invited to a party where there was going to be a band playing, and it was going to be catered and open bar and all this stuff. And he said, you guys should come to the party rather than just going down and bopping around Hollywood. And so he's on the phone with the guy, and I asked him, so where's the party at? And he said, I don't know. Let me ask. He asked the guy, and he turns back and he said, it's in Laurel Canyon. I said, well, we are going. We have a new plan now. And not only was it in Laurel Canyon, it was at a home with, industry significance. It was the house that it was held at was one time owned by Bob Fosse, film director that did All That Jazz, I think, was the biggest thing he ever did. And then after that, it had been owned for a while by some guy who calls himself McHugh or something, who directed the Charlie's Angels movies. And the theme of the party was Boogie Nights, the early 70s porn thing. So everybody, virtually, and most of these people were Hollywood people that have access to wardrobe departments and whatnot. So virtually everyone there was in period dress, 60s and 70s bell bottoms and paisley and afro wigs and big sunglasses, and and that was without question one of the weirdest nights of my life, to be in Laurel Canyon, just like a stone's throw from the Wonderland Death House and all of these other landmarks. In a film director's home where everyone was dressed as if it was 1972, and band was playing Doors music. It was just bizarre. It was like some kind of a weird having flashbacks to a 1970s acid trip or something. And it was just really bizarre. It was for that evening, I had literally been transported into the very time and place that I've spent the last, 6-7 years researching and writing about. And just a really weird night, man. Just
very cool.
Just bizarre, but very cool, yeah. And just out of nowhere. It just popped up out of nowhere, and next thing you know, here we are in this house in Laurel Canyon listening to Doors music, surrounded by people that looked like they just stepped out of 1972 or something. It was beyond bizarre. Really, just a really cool experience, and yeah. So that was a strange one.
Yeah. Now.
Anyway, I completely forgot what question I was looking at.
No, you hit it. I was just, I just kind of want to get your take of LA life, and, because you're so close to it, it really, I think that's probably one of the reasons why you did so good writing this, is because you are geographically closer to it, and that gets you closer to any given subject. I mean, you just have more connection to it. That's the way things go. So I think that's part of what's going on here. And
yeah, I took quite a few trips through there while I was working on the writing, and stopped and took pictures, and I still intend to go back and get more pictures, actually. Mm-hmm. The problem is that there's virtually no place to park in Laurel Canyon. There's nowhere to really leave your car. Yeah. So it makes it kind of hard to get around. But yeah, I spent a lot of time there just getting a feel for the place and looking around and just trying to picture in my mind, what it would have been like to be there in 1969 with all of these colorful characters, intermingling. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that definitely helped to capture, to better capture the whole, kind of spirit and mood of the time. Yeah. In the book that I wouldn't have been able to do if I was writing about something that happened in, New York or overseas or whatever.
Yeah. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but I do know that Kenneth Anger from time to time will do like a showing of Lucifer Rising or one of his other films, and he'll do a little Q&A session. I'm not sure if you've knew that happened. What do you think about the idea of going down there and doing a We Are Change style confrontation of him, where you ask him the tough questions? You ever think about doing that?
I didn't know he was. I thought he was deceased. I didn't know he was still alive. Is he still alive? I thought he was gone, actually.
Yeah, I know a couple people that saw him just a couple of weeks ago, like 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was a screening.
Really?
A screening of Lucifer Rising at one of those theaters in Hollywood, and he kind of got up on stage, and I guess he's a little tired. It sounded like he was bored. He might be interested to get some tough questions thrown at him. It might liven up his life a little bit. What do you think?
Maybe. Yeah, he can't be all that young a guy anymore. I mean, I'm not all that young, and he's got a couple decades on me at least. So I mean, yeah, he's got to be like pushing 80, I would think.
Yeah, I think he's in his 70s.
I think he made his first film like in the late 50s. I think his first early experimental films, I think, were made like in the. So like 65. He's got to be really old, isn't he?
Yeah, he's definitely. I think he's in his 70s. I don't know, but yeah, he is old for sure. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, I for some reason I had it in my mind that he had passed away a while ago, but apparently not.
Yeah.
I know quite a few people that were alive when I began this series are no longer around. Jim Morrison's dad, died while the series was in progress, and a number of other people. There's fewer and fewer living witnesses, that are out there these days. Because I mean, this scene began, circa 1964. It's 50 years, So it's been quite a while. So
it has been.
Yeah.
Now, Dave, I know that you have this book, Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon, available from your website, signed copies. Could you tell listeners about that and maybe some other ways that they can check out the book?
Yeah, I do have. I have a page on my website that where I have signed copies of both Weird Scenes and Program to Kill, and Weird Scenes both in hardcover and paperback, and Program to Kill only in paperback. It was never issued in hardcover. And various combinations. If people want like a combination of copies of both Program to Kill and Weird Scenes, a special package deal, and all of that's on a page on my website. And if you find my website, you can't really help but find the page because I have plastered links to it all over the place on my webpage. And it also, there's a link there to the review that I mentioned that has been posted online, a very, very, very positive review. There's a link to a preview page where you can go and read, I believe it's the foreword written by Nick Bryant, the preface written by myself, the table of contents, and chapter 1. So for anyone that's not familiar with the web series, that will give you a very good introduction, a very good taste of what to expect. And what else is on there? But anything else that comes up concerning the book will be on there. Any future reviews that come up and whatnot. So that's and then there's also a Facebook page. Which is that, if you're on Facebook, just search Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon, and you should be able to find it. And I believe it's actually a publicly accessible page. I don't think you have to necessarily be a member of the Facebook world to access it. And that there's all kinds of stuff on there about purchasing the book, and there's also all kinds of pictures of people and places, to get the visuals. If you want the visuals that go with the book, there's just all kinds of just scores of pictures that I put up there on important people and places, some of my originals and some vintage photographs from the era. And so that's all on the Facebook page. And so between that and the order page on my website is basically where I'm keeping all of the most up-to-date information on the book and availability and pricing and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely... I'm going to highly recommend listeners get this book. I'm also going to make mention that they should buy it from your website directly from you. Does that help you out more? Am I right in saying that, Dave?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Amazon, Amazon is not really my friend. As I've mentioned before, to other people, Amazon in the book world, they kind of operate like Walmart or Costco or whatever. They have tremendous buying power, which they leverage to basically force the publishers to give them huge bulk discounts on the books so that they can then sell them for deeply discounted prices while still making a hefty profit. And that benefits Amazon, and the argument could be made that it benefits consumers as well because you're getting the lowest possible price on the book. But it certainly doesn't do any favors to either the publisher or the authors. I mean, what it means is that the publisher makes a considerably less net profit on each book sold, and my royalties, as with all authors, are based on a percentage of net profit. So the less they make off the book, the less I make off the book. So like I say, Amazon's policies benefit Amazon, and some people seem to think that they benefit consumers, but the reality is in the long run that we all pay for those kind of policies, in terms of rapidly disappearing bookstores and the jobs that go with them, and, decent paying jobs and benefits and all of that, I mean, we ultimately all pay the price for seeking out the lowest possible price that we can pay for an item, And unfortunately, due to financial pressures that we're put under, we all kind of have to shop at Costco and Amazon. So it's a vicious cycle, really, and we're cutting our own throats ultimately by doing it. But I understand, why people do it. I mean, I can't really fault them for doing it, But the reality is that it benefits me much, much more to come directly through me than to go through Amazon. So, And I can't even compete with, even as the author of the damn book, I can't even get them at a price that will allow me to compete with Amazon, you know?
Yeah,
so,
I know what you mean, exactly. Yeah, it's crazy the prices they put on there. It's amazing. So, yeah, I'm definitely going to encourage people to help you out directly, Dave, and your website is daveswebbed.cnchost.com. Buy the book from there. It'll be a signed copy. And again, real quick, could you throw out the live signing event that's coming up?
Yeah, June 22nd, which kind of weird. It's the publisher, by the way, in case anyone's interested, the publisher shows the release date of the book, which was April 30th of all dates, you know. Probably the most notorious occult date on the calendar. And so I have no idea why he did that. He didn't seem to even be aware that there was any significance. In fact, when I asked him, I said, dude, was that deliberate? And he's like, what are you talking about? It's just another day, isn't it? And I said, well, not exactly. You got a lot to learn about the way the world works. So yeah, completely innocently, apparently, he chose April 30th as the release date, and now my big book signing is on June 22nd, the summer solstice. You know? So, yeah, it's kind of weird, but kind of appropriate, I suppose, in a way that the key dates of my book seem to be falling on on key occult dates. Yeah. But yeah, it's June 22nd at Book Soup. I do not know the address, but it's easy to look up. It's right on Sunset Boulevard in the Sunset Plaza area of West Hollywood. And I'm really hoping for a big turnout, and I'm very, very excited after all these years to get meet face to face with some of these people that have been following and supporting me for all these years. So I'm very excited about it.
Yeah. Well, you piqued my interest, Dave, and I might have to go to that event myself. And I want to.
I'd love to see you there. The more the merrier. I'm all for it. I mean, I'm considering maybe heading out on the Sunset and hit one of the bars for a drink afterwards.
Yeah, that's
so.
Yeah.
I really want to meet my. I think I want to meet my fans. I may decide after the event that I don't want to meet my fans. But for now, I am very, very excited. I really am. I am truly, really looking forward to, to getting out and meeting, some of these people that have been emailing me and following me for all these many years.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, Dave, and I do really want to make it up there. So we'll find a babysitter.
You're in San Diego?
I'm down here in Long Beach, so I'm certainly within reach. So
you're not too far at all then. Yeah. Okay.
I'm going to make my way up there. So definitely going to have to do that. Yeah, the issue for me is my child, but I can take care of that, no problem. So looking forward to that event.
I have a second one that's tentatively scheduled for this month, actually, for just 2 weeks from today on May 24th at an art gallery in Burbank, but not sure if the guy's going to be able to get the books and get it promoted in time. He said we might have to change the date, and so that one's in a state of flux right now, so I don't want to commit that date to anyone at this point, but the June 22nd one at Book Soup is that one is definitely on.
It's a go.
Yeah.
Cool.
What's that?
I said it's a go. It's a go.
It's a go. It is good to go. 4:00. I forgot the time. Yeah, June 22nd, 4 p.m. at Book Soup, and that one is for sure at this point. So, I will, as I say, the way to keep updated on the other one, the Burbank one, if that works better for anyone out there, is through the Facebook page and my website. I will keep people updated as that one takes shape. So.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you very much for being here, Dave. I also want to say congratulations on all the recent success.
Thank you very much. I'm like I say, I'm still kind of adapting to it, and I don't know if I want it to be too successful, you know. Then people are going to start like accusing me of being a sellout and shit, you know. He's gone mainstream now. He's a sellout, you know. And I was like,
well,
what are you gonna do?
just no matter what, just try to avoid Oprah's book club, and I think you'll be all right. Oh, man.
I will take that advice.
Okay, man. Take care, Dave. Thank you for listening to this episode of Trans Resistor Radio. I do hope you will all check out Dave's new book, Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon. I know that I am legitimately excited about that book signing, and I am planning on being there. So if you're in the area, I hope maybe we'll see you there too. But regardless, no matter where you're at, you're going to want to get a copy of this book because it's going to be a good thing to have. It's going to be an easy thing to share with others, as we were talking about earlier on in the interview. This is an easy topic to get a discussion going with anybody, really. This is a nice foot inside the door sort of conversation starter. So it really is great in that respect. So be sure to check out Dave's website, his book. I'll have the links posted in the show notes for this interview. Of course, my website is ageoftransitions.com. So any listeners, be sure to go there to get more information, all the relevant links. And also, go to ageoftransitions.com to subscribe to this podcast. Subscribe to Trans Resistor Radio. I hope you will do that. I hope you'll go back into the archive of past episodes and listen to those. And I want to thank anybody who has been a listener. And I just want to thank people who may be new listeners as well. So it's very exciting. I'm going to continue producing this podcast once a week. It comes out on Tuesdays or Wednesdays. So stay tuned. Don't touch that dial, the dial which doesn't even exist anymore. It's a touch screen or whatever. It's, it's not even a radio show. It's a podcast. So I am aware of that. It's a silly name, but, it's a fun name. So Trans Resistor Radio. I hope you do enjoy the podcast. My name is Aaron Franz. As always, I want to implore you, seeker, seek on.